All right, y'all. So welcome back from break, and welcome to 5.9, the global system of agriculture. So this one is going to be a little bit longer, but we're going to knock out some of the other stuff from a couple of the other sections. Uh, but this is looking at the global system of agriculture. Like what if you stand back and say, okay, what is everything? How does this work? How do we feed all these people? This is going to answer a large part of that question, not all of it by any stretch, but a large part of it should give you a sense, and you should at this point really have a sense of how this food system works. So let's go ahead and get started. These are some of the things that we'll be looking at. Uh, the global supply chain, we have talked about that. Uh-oh, got a pen. There it is. Sorry. So we've got, I have a pen issue here. The global supply chain, some countries become highly dependent on export commodities. And remember, a commodity is, just like a natural resource. And so, like if you're a coffee grower, that would be a natural commodity that you might be relying on for exports. And then the main elements of global food distribution networks are affected by political relationships, infrastructure, and world trade. All right. So let's go ahead and get started into this. So we do know that there is this global supply chain. So we've talked about that. And so the big key point here is to realize that there is this huge interdependence between countries regarding their food supply. All right. Now, countries could be self-sustaining. The United States could grow all of the food that we eat and not trade, but prices would generally be higher and we wouldn't have nearly the selection that we have. The fact that you can go get produce in the winter, that fresh produce in the winter, is a result of trade. And so we do have this interdependence. And who wins? Well, we do, the consumer, because we get fresh strawberries in January, but also the growers from the other countries. And so this is the interdependence, and it goes, like I said before, the U.S. is the world's largest food exporter, and so we benefit from this interdependence as well. All right. So if you take a look at this is a question that some people ask. Most of America's fruit is imported. Is that a bad thing? So if we look at all of the fruits and veggies that we eat, a lot of it. So if you look down here, more than half the fresh fruit that we eat and almost a third of the fresh vegetables come from other countries. And so, is this good? And remember, anytime you get the "is it good" question, your first two words should be "it depends." But in general, we would say this is definitely good for the consumer, the U.S. consumer. It's definitely good for the farmer that's growing food for us overseas, and the competition with an American farmer isn't the same as it would be for like a foreign car. Because the farmers here can't grow the same season as farmers in South America, and so it's not like Toyota competing against Ford. This because they can have obviously production the whole time the whole year. But so this is a little bit different in terms of who would get hurt. All right. So let's take a look at a couple of graphs here. And let me move my face out of the way. So looking at this interdependence. So larger countries with developed agriculture areas export food products to smaller, less developed countries. So we are definitely part of that. We are the biggest food exporter. Like I said, we're not the biggest food producer. Made that mistake once in saying that, but we are the biggest exporter of food. Let's take a look over here. This is average share of exports in U.S. agriculture. So all this is saying that 60. So here we go. Food grains over here. So food grain, oil seeds, fruits and tree nuts, crops. You get the idea. And so this is saying, look, of all the food grain that we grow, 65% is exported. All right. If we come down here, vegetables and melons. So of all the veggies and melons that we grow in the United States, we export 16.53% of it. All right. And so in terms of manufactured products, so this is we grew the crop and then we turned it into a finished good. Uh, Grain and oilseed milling products, meat products. You kind of see so 51% of grain and oilseed milling products. Uh, those would be exported of all the ones that we produce. And so that's kind of how you read this. All the sugar and confections. So of all the sugar that we produce, 17% of it would be exported. All right. And if we take a look over here, this is where all of our stuff goes. So this is comparing 1994 and 2019. And so take a look. The totals are a fair bit different. Okay, almost 4 times as much. And so, the growth of our exports has gone up a lot in terms of dollars. And so these percentages, if you look at some place like the EU, 15% of our exports went to the EU, and now it's only 8.5. But the dollar value is still going to be higher over here. Probably, I haven't done the math, but the percentages have changed. So let's take a look real quick. So East Asia. So if we look at percentages, East Asia, we have dropped from 35 down to 29. However, North America, so that'd be the U.S. and Canada, went from 22 to 29, and so that's a pretty big increase in percentages and a real big increase in dollars. And a large part of that, if you remember, was NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. That just got redone a year or so ago. It's a new name for it, but I'm not recalling it right now. Exports to other North American countries have gone up a lot. Let's take a look. So South Asia's here. We have definitely increased our exports to South Asia a whole lot. And you can kind of see the other numbers. So this just gives you a sense of where all that food is going. All right. Let's see. So this is some of our imports. So U.S. imports, if we look at bulk products and high value products, so bulk would just be just like the raw stuff. The high value would be stuff like coffee. Okay. And so you can see that over the course of however many years, what's that, 1994, the number of high value products, so like coffee and tea, has gone way up, whereas the number of bulk products that we would buy has remained relatively constant in terms of the number of dollars. All right. Breakdown of U.S. imports of high value commodities. So obviously the processed stuff that has been picked and transformed into something else before coming here. That's what I mean by processed stuff. So this would be like a finished good, or it could be a good that's been processed and then going in to produce something else. Raw products, you can see down here, account for this much, and then semi-processed products. So anyway, so you can kind of see where the imports, what we're importing. So majority of our imports are processed stuff. All right. And so this is agricultural products as part of our global supply chain. And so this is stuff that we import in the U.S. And so in 2016, 99.9% of all the bananas that we ate in the U.S. came from other countries. All right. Same with limes, same with mangoes, same with pineapples. Papayas are way up there, asparagus. And so you can kind of go down and take a look. 78% of the blackberries, 50% of the grapes. And so we import. So if you like to eat any of this stuff, you are benefiting from global trade. All right. So this system that we've set up. And so you can see from Latin America, this is the source of imported fruit by value. And so of all of the fruit that we eat, okay, so this is just fruit, 46% of it comes from Mexico. And so we are a huge buyer of fruit from Mexico, which benefits both of us. All right. Chile, 14.7%, Guatemala, rest of the world, 8%. So you can kind of get a sense of where the food comes from. And again, almost half of it comes from Mexico itself. So big trading partner there. All right. So some countries are dependent on export commodities, things like coffee and tea. All right. This again, I'm sorry. And so when we look at some of those countries that are dependent on those export commodities, we want to look at some of those economic and environmental problems that can be the result of that dependence. Okay. There's a reason they're dependent on it. And that's because it is providing income to them. But obviously there are some problems that come along with it. So let's take a look at some of this stuff. So what I wanted to do first is show you a map of where the developed countries are and where the developing countries are. Whereas we've been saying in class, MDCs, more developed or most developed countries, and LDCs would be lesser developed or least developed countries. And so this map kind of shows you where the wealth is. So obviously US and Canada, over here in Germany, Saudi Arabia. And so the blue, the darker the blue, the wealthier, the lighter the green, the poorer. Okay. And so what we're going to see in general, and this isn't, like anything, nothing's 100%, but in general, if we cut the world in half like this, we're going to see that the South often grows stuff and sends it to the North. Okay, and so a lot of times, especially for things like coffee and chocolate, the producers are in the South, and the consumers, generally with the exception of Australia, are more in the North. Okay, and there is exceptions that we'll see, but that's kind of a general thought. So coffee production. So kind of starting off here. So if we look down here at the bottom, if we look at where the coffee is grown, again, most of it, these yellow ones mean that they are in the top 10 of coffee producers. And so obviously a lot of coffee is grown down here in the South. And then if we look up here to this graph, this is showing coffee consumption, where the coffee drinkers are. And so, if we kind of cut it in half, so you can see, and obviously South America, they're up there in terms of what they drink, but you can see the vast majority of coffee grown in the South, the vast majority of coffee consumed in the North. And so when we talk about export reliance, this is the Southern Hemisphere, countries in the Southern Hemisphere benefiting from this global trade because they're able to grow this product and then sell it to the wealthier countries. And again, we'll look at some of the economic and environmental problems associated with that. But this is just kind of generally how this system works. All right. If we look at cocoa or cacao, is how I've heard the actual pronunciation, but cocoa. So if we kind of draw this line again, take note, Africa, 72%. All right. And so the majority of cocoa grown is in West Africa, all right, in these countries here. And so, and obviously over here as well, and then some is grown here, but 72% comes from there. And so when we look at, that's where the cocoa production is, and then we look at the world's biggest chocolate consumers, I'm not going to tick them all off here, but the US, Russia, Canada, Germany is over in here. Brazil. So Brazil, they produce a lot and they consume a lot. Australia, France, Japan, Mexico, UK, Spain, and China. And so a lot of these are wealthier countries. And so again, growing in the South for the most part, and selling to the North with some exceptions. All right. This is for tea producers. So again, this is, I should have kept producers on the bottom, but so kind of draw the line. Obviously, China is going to be a big tea producer, and so these are the major tea producers. China there, but we can again see where the consumers are. More consumers in the North, and again, that's just because the North is generally a wealthier place. And then finally, banana production and consumption. So here's consumption up here. All right. So U.S. we like a lot of bananas. A lot of countries in Western Europe do. Some in Africa, Brazil, and so that's where they're being consumed. And if you look at where they're being grown, again, China's kind of an exception here to this north-south rule. The U.S., we might have a couple of banana trees here, but not a whole lot. And then finally, palm oil. This is going to be the last one. So palm oil, the majority of it is actually grown in here. So Indonesia and Malaysia account for something like 70%, something like that, of all the palm oil. And here's where all the consumption is. Again, it's up north. And we're going to watch something in a bit on palm oil. So you'll get a sense for what it's all in. Oh, here it is. Indonesia and Malaysia, 87% of palm oil production, 22% of palm oil consumption. So 87% is right here. All right. And this is the thing that makes it all possible. So, if we go back to all these pictures, palm oil, bananas, tea producers, cocoa, coffee, all that stuff is grown in all these far off places compared to where we are. And this is the kind of stuff that makes the system work. And that is, container ships, because you can put all those coffee beans or cocoa beans or whatever it is on one of these, send it halfway across the world at a relatively cheap price. All right. So this is what has helped grow the global economy immensely. All right. So emphasis on growing crops for exports can create economic and environmental problems. So when we look at this concept of monocropping, and again, monocropping is just growing the same thing over time. All right. And so these are some of the problems. It can lead to water pollution, soil erosion, deforestation, and salinization of the soil. Okay, and it's because you're just growing this one crop, and some other practices we'll look at here in just a sec. All right, so this is, if we look at some of the issues of land around the world, you can kind of see what's causing some of the problems. So here's our key here. So overgrazing in the blue, deforestation, agricultural activities, overexploitation of vegetation, and bioindustrial activities. That's a smaller one. And so you can see here in Asia, 32% of the pressure on the land is coming from overgrazing. Here in North America, 35%, 52% from agricultural activities. And you can kind of look around the world here. Africa, overgrazing is the biggest problem. And in South America, deforestation is the biggest problem. So again, gives you a sense of what's going on in different parts of the world. Australia, overgrazing is the biggest problem by far. So let's take a look real quick. And so this is the stuff that's going to bleed into, I think, 5.10, the one coming up. So we're going to take a little bit of extra time here and save some time on the next unit. So on the next section. So take a look at the water pollution. So when we talk about water pollution, a lot of sediment runoff. So the topsoil that runs off can cloud the water, which reduces the amount of sunlight that can reach those aquatic plants. A lot of times that water runoff is going to contain the fertilizers and the pesticides and other stuff that will run off of the soil and into the water. And a lot of times you'll end up with these things, especially from the fertilizers, called algae blooms. And this is what they are. They really mess up, a body of water, and it can suck all the oxygen out. So depleted oxygen. So now you're killing all these fish, and so that is definitely a significant problem. So the water pollution is a byproduct of the way that we are doing agriculture. All right, and also confined livestock, the manure and sludge from the farms, that also washes off. And there's ways that if you look at like CAFOs that we've talked about, the feedlots, there's ways that they try to mitigate that, try to lessen that kind of runoff, and it works. There's definitely less of it, but the runoff of animal waste is definitely a problem. Okay, soil erosion. So here's an example down here of soil erosion, and it makes it to where you can't grow crops. And the causes of soil erosion, those three: deforestation, clear cuttings, that would be something like this. Overgrazing, you're not taking care of a pasture, you're letting it be eaten completely up. And then use of chemicals. So all those things can affect soil erosion. And then when that happens, you have this loss of arable land. So fewer crops, clogged and polluted waterways, increased flooding. So this can be a significant problem. All right. Deforestation, we've talked about this a fair amount. So if we have deforestation, you end up with soil erosion. Talked about that. The water cycle is disrupted. I'm going to leave it to your AP environmental science teacher that they have explained that one to you. Greenhouse gas emissions, same thing. Loss of biodiversity. So we're losing not all of them, but losing a lot of the animals that thrive in this type of place. And then just the loss of natural beauty. That is something. It's not something you can really put a price tag on, but it's something. When you look at this picture down here, this is gorgeous. This is not so much. And this is a picture. This is not two different pictures. This is one picture. And so this is deforestation, and this is jungle. Okay, so and so here, the question is it okay to cut this down and put, an agricultural product there? What's the cost over here, and what's the benefit over here? And do the costs outweigh the benefit? All right, and then finally, the salinization of water. And so I'm going to keep this one relatively quick, again, relying on your environmental science teacher. But this happens mostly in more arid areas. And so someplace like Tucson could be part of that. And so the idea here is that, if you are watering the ground through irrigation because you're trying to grow crops, the water tends to evaporate faster. And when the water evaporates, the water goes away, but not all of the stuff that's in the water. And so there's salt in that water. And so when you start irrigating and start dumping more and more water on this land, then the water evaporates, leaving salt, and the salt kills all the crops. Okay. Here's the whole process, but that's generally, that's the non-science version of it. How about that? But anyway, when that happens, you end up with this desertification, and that's when everything dies. Okay, all of the plants die, and you end up with the desert. So And you can also impact the local water source, things like that. If you look at desertification, here's some of the riskier areas. This is land uh, where desertification is a problem, and obviously Sahara Desert, but you can kind of start to see, where those just desert areas are. All right. Now, one of those areas, and this is called the Sahel. So it's kind of this band that separates the Sahara, and we call this part Sub-Sahara Africa. All right, so if you hear that phrase. And so the Sahel is this line across Africa that they are trying to help prevent the spread of the desert and try and reclaim it for growing crops. All right, so we're going to watch this, just a couple of minutes of this video. The whole thing's good, but just in terms of trying to save some time. So let's do this real quick.
This is the Sahel. Thousands of kilometers of dry, arid earth. An ancient battleground between man and the desert. Bordering the Sahara, desert sands are silently engulfing the region, destroying fertile land and displacing vulnerable communities in the process. But there are those fighting back. These are unlikely heroes, men and women at the forefront of the Green Revolution who may just secure the future livelihoods of millions. Colonel Papa Wali Gay leads the fight against desertification in northern Senegal.
Et je suis le directeur général de l'Agence nationale de la Grande Muraille Verte au niveau du Sénégal. On est effectivement au cœur de la Grande Muraille Verte dans son segment Sénégal qui fait 545 km. Et là, vous voyez les plantations qui sont autour de nous sont des plantations qui datent de l'année 2010.
Trees are the first line of defense against desertification. Stretching from Dakar to Djibouti, the Great Green Wall Initiative is an ambitious project that aims to halt desertification by planting 11 million hectares of trees across the width of Africa.
Oui, au Sénégal, nous sommes un pays très exposé au phénomène de la désertification, puisque nous avons à peu près 35 000 hectares qui sont dégradés par an et sur lesquels l'État n'arrive à reconstruire que 30 000 hectares. Donc l'effort du gouvernement du Sénégal, c'est de faire plus de reconstruction que de dégradation.
Reducing that degradation is crucial to improving the lives of the semi-nomadic communities that live in this harsh environment. Ibrahima Diawara, the principal of the local school, has witnessed how the loss of land drives poverty, unemployment, and forced migration.
L'école a ouvert ses portes après. Quelques années après, l'école a été obligée de fermer. Bon, le problème majeur ici, c'est la transhumance. Parce que d'habitude, vous voyez avec le problème, c'est l'herbe qui est l'exigence. Puisque puis ici, les populations, ils ont plus leur priorité, c'est dans les animaux. Maintenant, et les enfants sont obligés d'être avec leurs parents. Nous aussi, on n'a pas les moyens de retenir les enfants. Bon, c'est ça. Maintenant, vu cela, l'école a été fermée. La dernière fois que l'école a été fermée, c'était en 2006.
The Sahel has always been a hard place to survive, and the Green Wall Initiative has expanded from tree planting to include education and action on better land use.
Donc il faut dire ici qu'au Sénégal, je crois que c'est comme dans les autres pays africains, la cause principale c'est l'action de l'homme. C'est les hommes qui détruisent plus que ce qu'ils ne construisent. On coupe beaucoup d'arbres, on brûle la forêt et on ne laisse pas grand-chose. Ça c'est un. Deuxième cause principale, c'est les changements climatiques. Il n'y a plus assez de pluie, il fait très chaud et le milieu se dégrade. Ça aussi c'est un constat.
The Sahel lies between the Sahara and the African savanna. It is one of the most threatened regions when it comes to climate change. But some communities, like the women in this village, have found a way to fight back.
Maimouna Sen commands respect. quietly leading an environmental revolution. Her army, a band of women. Their weapons, spades and hoes. The women of Koili Alpha are pioneering new approaches to land use. They're preparing arable land for planting season. By harvest, this community will enjoy fruits and vegetables never grown here before. The women's agricultural production has boosted food security and generated employment. Their success has meant that instead of migrating to find new pastures for their animals, they can stay in the village all year round.
Sabo walli amen ɗo kam min jahatno ko luumaji goɗɗi min jeeli yo luujumaji Allah walli amen ha ɗum kam kala ko mbiɗa min mbaɗa ñamde amen ɗo min mbaɗa minen mbaɗanta koye amen feemi min koccete hen hidan min jahanno min coodoye luujumaji so min gaddi ñola taw min ganda koɗi mbara joni o ɗo kam sa minen mbaɗanta koye amen min ñaam hen hamin kaari cukalani amen ñaam hen.
Cette grande muraille
All right, so I just wanted to give you a sense of what the Sahel was like and the challenges that were there and what they were trying to do to, prevent the expansion of the desert and how they can actually survive and thrive there. All right. So the other thing that we're going to watch, and this is something on palm oil. So you may or may not have heard this palm oil debate, but palm oil is in a ton of stuff. If you go into your pantry, and start looking at the ingredients of things, you're going to see that palm oil is probably in close to, half of it. Maybe not quite half, but pretty close. And so when we look at something like this, and this is where the debate comes in. So this is a palm oil plantation. And so, obviously we've had some deforestation here in order to plant all these palm olive trees. And so the question is this an economic opportunity, or do you see environmental degradation? And so obviously the answer is going to be a bit of both, because the people who own this farm, own this plant, this plantation, they are going to be making money from it, but at what cost? And so, is the deforestation here a significant enough problem that we should try and figure other things out to do with palm oil? Look at how palm oil is grown, what can be done and what should be done. All right, so if we look at palm oil, something like, and this is an environmental group, I think somewhere around 50% of all packaged supermarket products have palm oil. It's probably somewhere around there. And if you look at the major producers, obviously Indonesia and Malaysia. So Indonesia is way up here. They're producing a bunch of it. They're by far the largest producer. By far the largest producer, and Malaysia as well. And so that's really, they're neighbors, put it that way. But this is how they get that done. So you cut down the forest to grow the palm oil. So deforestation in these countries is a significant problem. And so that's one thing, when we talk about sustainable agriculture, is this sustainable and is this environmentally friendly? At the same time, remember, this is feeding families. All right, the fact that they can have these plantations. So anyway, take a look. A lot of the palm oil is there, but here's Indonesia. Here's the other part of Malaysia, so you can kind of get a sense of where we are in the world. Here's China up here. So, yeah. So this is like a little 5-minute video on palm oil. And I play this in part because AP likes this question. It's a good question because palm oil is representative of bigger problems in global agriculture. Coffee, chocolate, same kind of thing. So let's take a quick watch. 2.5 minutes.
There's a good chance you're not familiar with it, even though you'll find it in many of the products you use every day. It's in everything, from makeup and toothpaste to donuts, chocolate bars, and in some countries, biodiesel fuel. It goes by many names, but it's most commonly known as palm oil. Global consumption of palm oil has quintupled since 1990, Oil derived from the palm fruit is easy to extract, has a higher yield than other types of vegetable oils, and can be used in dozens of products. But the proliferation of palm oil also poses a massive environmental threat. Each year, palm oil plantations destroy millions of acres of forested land, create billions of tons of carbon pollution, and kill endangered wildlife. All of this makes the palm oil industry one of the worst environmental offenders on the planet. In 2015, over 62,000 square miles around the world, much of it former forests, were committed to palm oil plantations. That's an area 4 times the size of Switzerland. Palm oil is one of the top 3 drivers of deforestation in Indonesia, a country that supplies more than half of global demand. Each year in Indonesia, fires are set to clear forested lands to make way for palm oil production. Just last year, over 10,000 square miles were torched, creating fires so big they could be seen from outer space. All of this unleashes massive amounts of carbon into the air. Fires in 2015 added more than 2 billion tons of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The burning of forests to clear land for plantations threatens the 10,000 square mile Luso ecosystem in Sumatra, the largest intact swath of rainforest in Southeast Asia. It's home to hundreds of unique species and is the only place left in the world where orangutans, rhinos, tigers, bears, and elephants live side by side. But their home is disappearing around them. The Sumatran tiger and the Sumatran rhino are threatened with extinction. Only a few hundred of each species exist in the wild, and their habitats are often in the path of land clearing. In Borneo, there has been a 50% decrease in orangutan populations in the past 65 years. This is a direct result of the forest fires and conversion of woodlands for palm oil cultivation. Alongside logging and mining, land clearing for agriculture is currently one of the leading causes of deforestation. If consumers don't demand more sustainable practices soon, the products we buy can and will contribute to the loss of the world's rainforests. You can help by purchasing products that do not contain palm oil, or if they do, were made sustainably. Go to takepart.com/palm oil for more information.
All right, so just a real quick kind of look at some of the issues around palm oil. So, all right, last little bit, and then we'll be done. So sorry for the length of this one. So this is looking at political relationships and trade networks and how those affect global agriculture. So let's kind of get started here. Political relationships. Let's see, when we look at agribusiness, so we know what agribusinesses are. We're talking about the big companies. And so this is just kind of a pick bananas because it's a decent representation of what's going on in terms of agriculture. So if you look at the top banana producers, we have Dole, Chiquita, Del Monte. So these are all US based, all right? And then these other brands. And so these are the top, the big top producers of bananas. And so, if you look at Dole, they have a lot of influence in developing countries, put it that way. And so, when they go into developing countries, they say, look, here's what we expect. And, the political clout that a lot of these agribusinesses have in developing countries is significant, and so there's definitely some good and some bad that go along with that. So, but that's kind of the gist of what I want you to get from this is that, these big agricultural businesses can go into developing countries. And so, are they taking advantage of them or providing economic opportunity? That's a great question. It gets back to the video we watched about making the shirt. The young woman in Bangladesh who was earning something like 10 cents an hour. Is she being taken advantage of, or is that an economic opportunity because that was better than what she was doing? That's for you to decide what the moral thing is there. But anyway, so those kind of things can happen in agribusiness as well. So when we look at one of the other things that they've started doing is this thing called fair trade. And so fair trade is an attempt to have the farmers earning more money and have a better standard of or quality of life for the farmers. If you look at this is kind of the principles of fair trade. And so here's kind of how this works. So this is coffee. So if you buy fair trade coffee, so as part of this fair trade group, they set a minimum price. So here, I got old man eyes. So this is like $1. this is in cents, so $1 a pound. All right. So they would say, look, if you're part of this fair trade organization, you're going to get a minimum of $1 a pound. So whatever the global market price is, if the market price goes above, like up here, lost my pen. So, if the market price jumps, then the fair trade price can jump with it. But if the market price drops, like it did here, then the fair trade farmers still get this dollar price. All right. And so if you are, if you want to help farmers out in this sense, then if you purchase fair trade products, then you know that the farmers are earning more than they would have if they weren't part of the fair trade system. So the question comes down, would you rather buy, a bag of coffee for $10, or would you, that's fair trade, or would you rather pay $7 for coffee that's not fair trade? And we've seen this before, they'll produce what we demand. And so the more we buy of a certain type, then that's what's going to keep going. And so when you look at like the real cost of chocolate, and you watch the chocolate thing right before break, this one says 3% of the proceeds go to the farmer. That's a pretty small amount, so just something to keep in mind. So is it better to buy fair trade chocolate and pay a little bit more for it, or not? And so this one's kind of looking at a regular cup of coffee. Here's the percentage that the retailers, the roasters, the exporters, the buyers, and then the farmers, they might get 3 cents, I think it says, out of that. Yeah. And so now again, to be fair, pun not intended, but to be fair, if you look at, a cotton shirt, and I think this was in one of the videos, and it was a fair point, the growers of any of the natural materials, any of the raw materials, sorry, they're not going to get a big percentage. So the person who grows cotton for the t-shirt, they're going to get a very small percentage of the overall price of that t-shirt. So that's definitely part of it, taking it from the raw product and converting it to the finished product. There's a lot of steps there. And so, what's fair, again, that's for you to decide. But anyway, so this is the idea. And after watching the chocolate thing, hopefully you kind of get the sense that you'd like to see farmers earn a reasonable living. All right. So lastly, the political relationships that affect trade. So obviously, we do all of this importing and exporting of food. And so political relationships definitely play a big part of that. And so I wanted to show you real quick. This is, so the US and China's political relationship over the last bit has been a little bit more strained, especially economics. And so when Trump became president, he started imposing a lot of tariffs on Chinese products. And so that's this stuff over here. So these are, all right. So this is the stuff that was imposed on China. So started putting tariffs. So here's the tariff. And remember, a tariff is a tax. And so that means that if you sell machinery that was produced in China, if you sold it for $100, now with this 25% tariff, it costs $125 in the US now. And so the tariffs make the imports more expensive. And so you can see all the different ones. And so these are going to correspond. So you can see up here, section 301, that's going to be what these numbers refer to. So it's just different sections. All right. And so we put tariffs on a lot of their stuff. And so in response, China said, and in trade wars, nobody wins in these. And so China said, okay, that's fine. We're going to start putting tariffs on your stuff. And so if you're an agricultural producer in the US, and a large part of your market was to China, you just got hit in a pretty big way. If you're a cotton grower, they just put a 50% tariff on your product. And so all the cotton that was coming into China from the US in order to make shirts and things, it just got 50% more expensive. And so the companies in China, they're going to buy a lot less of it. They're going to go find somebody else. And so these political relationships can have big impacts on farmers. Okay. And you can kind of see here, these are our agricultural exports to China. And we had this huge drop off in 2018. And so again, just the idea that political relationships have an impact on that kind of stuff. All right, and the last section is looking at infrastructure in developing countries. So if you watch the chocolate videos, you saw that getting the product, the coffee beans, the cocoa beans in this part, in this respect, getting the cocoa bean from the farm to the port is a bit of a journey with some of the infrastructure because the roads aren't that great. And so if you look at farmers in poorer countries, then you see things like this. There's erosion of the roads, river crossing. So, if your farm is over here and you're trying to get your product over here, this doesn't seem significant, but it is. Dust problem, rough roads, stuff like that. And so, if the infrastructure isn't there, it's just one more challenge. It's not like this can't be overcome, but it's just one more challenge to have to pay, to have to deal with. And then once you get it to the port, and so this would be part of the infrastructure as well. So if you're a developing country, and let's say that you are a coffee you produce coffee beans, you need this, you need this infrastructure because you need to allow these ships to come in because your crop gets grown over here, gets sent on these roads here, and then ends up in a smaller place, and then it finally ends up in these port cities, and then gets loaded onto this. And so that the infrastructure to get it from the farm to the port is a big deal, and the smoother that is, the cheaper it is, and the more efficient it is, and it's better off for everyone all around, and so that is one of the issues facing a lot of the poor farmers. And so if we look at this is rice farming in terms of producing in terms of cost. I'm sorry. So if we look at this, crops developed from developed countries are often more plentiful and cheaper to buy than crops in developing countries. Farmers in developed countries may receive subsidies, and so again, if we're looking at the infrastructure, then this farmer faces a lot. It's a lot easier for that person. So the infrastructure is there because when they put it into here, there's going to be roads and ships and all that kind of stuff that are readily accessible as compared to these farmers. Okay. All right. We'll leave it at that. So yeah, sorry for the length of this one. The next one's definitely going to be a bit shorter. So y'all take care.